Right, guys, I don't know how many times I've said this, but Sage need to be sacked and investigated for the wild predictions they're using to underline government policy, or force it whichever way you want to look at it. The other day, as you might know, Fraser Nelson from The Spectator spoke to the chair of Sage on Twitter, who essentially said we model what the government's policymakers want us to. So in other words, Sage set out to back up the lockdown and restriction narrative. It's not an objective look at what might happen in the future. The government says they want lockdowns, and Sage come up with the biggest doom and gloom model to back up that narrative, meaning the government are clearly following the science that they make up. Of course, this should be a #1 headline for all media outlets out there, but of course we know they love the fear porn as much as Sage do, so won't be calling them out, will they? As you might have heard, Boris is now considering more restrictions thanks to Sage, who have given him 3 options that ain't gonna surprise ya. One involves guidance not to gather at Christmas, which will be ignored by most, as you likely know. The second is legally enforced bans on gatherings, which seem impossible since Boris lacks the actual power to do it, and people ain't listening to him anymore. Then of course you got the third option, which is another full lockdown, because these commie tosspots love that shit, as you know. Now, the second and third options require Parliament to come back and vote on them, which will see an even bigger rebellion than last week. Ministers quitting and all sorts of shit like that, but the restrictions will get through on Labour votes. Many of the Tory rebels, it's got to be said, from last week turned against it in part thanks to emails from voters telling them they are dead set against it. A fair few of them cited these emails in their speeches last week, so doing that again might be useful if your MP's still not opposing this lunacy. In fact, emailing Labour MPs might also help because, like Tory MPs, they're going to care about their own election prospects in the future, even if you plan never to vote for any of these tosspots again. Remember, they don't know that, and since they always lie to us, we can lie to them. Now, as always, it will likely do nothing for most people, but it is something everyone can do with ease, and like I said, it did work with some of the Tory MPs. Either way, though, Sage need to be sacked and investigated for the bullshit models that they have thrown out and a never-ending push for these damaging lockdowns. The article that I didn't even bother reading out is an example of that today. But Boris, you can stick option 1, 2 and 3 straight up your jacksie, because at the end of the day we're going for option 4. We're gonna do what the fuck we want, and lockdowns are finished, let me tell you that. At the end of the day, the public ain't interested in your scaremongering bullshit, and not even the media can help push it anymore. No one trusts them, and no one's gonna bloody trust them ever again.
There is a pattern consistent throughout history of oppressed people turning on the oppressors. Slaves against their owners, the peasantry against the feudal barons, colonies, Mr. Verhofstadt, against their empires, and that is why Britain is leaving. And it doesn't matter which language you use, we are going, and we are glad to be going. We're off.